The backdrop is fantastic. The sunsets we get up here, oh my gosh. Bill Parment doing the job for us, and he's here to talk to you right now in person. Anybody who wants to talk to him, you call in 753-JACK or 753-5225, and you'll be right on the horn with him. So good morning, Bill, and thank you for coming over and giving us some of your time.
My pleasure.
Well, I know how busy you are down in Albany, and I'm not saying that facetiously. I know you are busy, and of course, we do have something going on that's curious. We haven't had a budget passed for how many weeks now? It's been a long
9 or 10.
9 or 10 weeks, which is unheard of. Of course, you don't get paid, right?
Right. They hold legislative pay when we are unable to enact a budget.
Yeah. Then they give it to you, though, later. Right?
We do get it.
Yeah, eventually.
Eventually.
Yeah.
And, yeah, so that, well, that's meant to mean an incentive, I guess, for the legislature to enact a budget. It's never worked very well, obviously.
No.
So it, you know, but eventually we do get to pay. But Mort's comments are kind of a good segue, I think, into the topic of the day, which is the budget. And Mort, I have routinely voted for the mental health budget. One of the few areas of the budget that I have voted for, I generally vote against probably 90% of the budget. I'd have to go back and really check the record, but I have opposed New York State's budgets because I felt that they were too aggressive, relied too much on one-shot revenues and borrowing, and didn't really honestly provide for a balanced budget. I've always been willing, though, to vote for the mental health budget because I think it's an area where we have failed in New York State to provide adequate support, particularly in the local community, for people who have mental illness. As Reed said, we've closed our mental hospitals mostly, starting back with a decision called the Willowbrook decision. There was a move to basically close mental hospitals and put the population that needs mental health care back into the community. And to the extent that that is good in theory, I supported that. But the problem was that the state never followed that population back to the local community with adequate support in the community. So it's been a struggle, and it remains a struggle. Now, as you correctly indicated, the governor is preparing a one-week extender of the budget for our consideration on Monday. And what many don't understand about these extenders and about the governor's power is that he is the only source of an extender. The legislature can't put together an extender and put it up and vote on it. We have to have the governor, under our state constitution, propose to the legislature an extender, or any budget bill for that matter. And he has the authority in the budget resolution and in Article 7 to put into that budget what he wants to put into it. And if he decides that he wants to cut mental health and put that in the extender, then the legislature is confronted with this choice. We can vote to extend the budget with the cut encapsulated in the budget bill, or we can vote against the budget bill and in fact shut the state down. Now, the governor's basically been doing this the last couple of weeks, 2 or 3 weeks now, putting things into his budget extender bills that basically have cuts and other things the legislature isn't particularly fond of. And our choice has been, again, to either vote for the reductions or vote to shut the state down. Now, many people think, well, this doesn't sound right. Well, in political theory, you might not think it is right, but in our state constitution, the legislature may not amend governor's program language in appropriations bills. This has been adjudicated, went to court, all the way to the Court of Appeals. The Court of Appeals ruled with the governor, this was with George Pataki, that the governor can in fact change state law in his budget appropriations bills, and the legislature is prohibited from amending his language. And so it you know, literally puts a gun to our head. Now, you know, the alternative would be to adopt a budget. The problem we have there is that because the Senate is so evenly divided, they can't get 32 votes for what in fact will be a very difficult budget. Anytime you're asking legislators to cut services, raise taxes, and do more borrowing, that's a difficult budget. And those are the kinds of choices that are being presented to us. Now, in the Assembly, because there's a majority of about 107 Democrats and 43 Republicans, the Speaker could probably get the necessary 76 votes for a budget that we could pass. That's not the case in the Senate, where you have 62 members. You need 32 to pass a bill. There are now 32 Democrats, at least on paper 32 Democrats, and the Republicans have said they're not going to provide any votes for a budget, and so far they haven't provided votes for any of the extenders as well. And so if one of the Democrats decides to become a hero and say, I'm not voting for this, then they're at deadlock. And so we've had this situation now for, well, this is the second year, and it's made governing very difficult. In years past, there was a majority in both houses that could enact a budget. Sometimes we didn't because we were at war with the governor, but the legislature had majorities that could in fact act as a majority. Today we have a situation where the Senate does not have an effective majority, and it makes budget enactment very difficult. It's kind of interesting to me from a political point of view. Many people think that competition is the be-all and end-all of the American experience. And here you have a situation where the Senate is so competitive between the two parties that nothing gets done. And it's one of the things you need to consider when you think about competition. Sometimes it doesn't produce results, it produces deadlock.
Well, Governor Patterson is a lame duck at this point. He's out.
He is.
Why is he being so stubborn about putting these things in? I'm not sure I quite understand what an extender is.
Well, it just basically says that we will extend the authority to expend state money for another period of time.
But apparently,
because the authority ran out April 1st.
When you didn't pass the budget.
When we didn't pass a budget. So every week since April 1st, the governor has said, okay, here's a bill that will provide authority to spend money for the next week. And so we've been doing extenders.
But you got to choke down certain things you don't like that he puts into them.
Well, he only sends up the things he wants to send up. He doesn't send up the entire
But you said
budget.
the Senate doesn't vote on it. Now, how can that go
well,
through?
They have been, but they have been.
Yeah.
But so far, to my knowledge, I may be incorrect on this, but I don't think so. There have been no Senate votes for or no Republican votes for the extenders. The Democrats have been able to muster the 32 for the extenders. Now, last week, 2 of the Democrats said, we're not voting for any additional extenders. And so now their question is, can they round up a couple of Republicans to fill that gap? I think they will, based on what I've read in the newspapers. Some of the Republicans, particularly in the Capital District, have said they would be willing to vote for extenders. So push comes to shove, I think we will have an extender done on Monday. But again, it will be an extender of the governor's choosing, because he is the only one that can write the bill. And we are constitutionally prohibited from amending it. So we're a dilemma of our own making, frankly. We have, for too many years, spent too much money, borrowed too much, and relied on one-shot revenues to keep the house of cards afloat here, or whatever, this mixed metaphor. But we need to exercise restraint, and it's difficult to get legislative bodies to do that.
They try to.
I have been a constant critic of this budget process. For the years I've been in Albany, and I've probably voted against more budget bills than any Democrat currently serving.
Well, you've probably been there longer than most of them.
I've been there longer than most of them, that's true. But I'm also the only Democrat that routinely speaks against the budget in various parts. I get up every year and speak against various parts of the budget. I'm the only Democrat that does it. It's considered a violation of the party rule, if you will. But that doesn't bother me. I was never overwhelmed by loyalty to party, in the sense that I feel that I owe to my party the responsibility to correct my party's errors if, in fact, I feel that they're in error. And I'm tougher on my party than I'm on the other party, because I don't belong to the other party. They have to take care of their problems. But so I've routinely spoken against the budget, but it hasn't made me popular with the leadership. But